Hello everyone, welcome back to Zdenek's English podcast. I am your host Zdenek and you're listening to my podcast. How are you doing everyone? As always, I've got a very interesting guest and today it's none other than Clare. Hi Clare.
Hello, how are you doing, Zdenek? Okay.
I'm okay. How are you?
I'm good.
Good to have you on the podcast, Clare, and you will be surprised, but you're not the first Clare on this podcast. There are two. There are two regular.
Sorry, I'm curbing my enthusiasm. Please feel free to speak.
So it's all right. I won't edit this out. This is interesting. I like it. I like this. I like this start. It's a very positive start. I like it. I just wanted to say it's probably very unimportant, but for this podcast, it's interesting that you're third Clare appearing on this podcast. We've got one American Clare who is sort of a regular. That her name is spelled Claire, and then there's one British Clare that is spelled Clare. So which one is you?
I'm also without the I, so Clare. Yeah.
Whenever Claire appears on this podcast, we always have to get this out of the way. Yeah,
so. You do, yes. People get quite upset about it for some reason.
Do you mean when your name is Claire, or?
Yes, I mean when it's misspelled.
Well, I can't possibly get this wrong because, as I said, I've had two different Claires on the podcast. They have all explained this to me. They've both explained this to me already. So I'm ready.
Okay, good. Yeah.
So I assume if you are without I, that means you're British Claire as well.
That's right. But I believe that the name is originally French.
Ah.
Yeah, it comes originally from France. My dad was a real Francophile, and he liked the name. And when I was born, there weren't that many Claires around. It was quite an unusual name then. It's become much more popular since.
Yeah. Okay. Wonderful. So Claire, where are you from in England?
I'm originally from Yorkshire in the north of England. This is for those of you who don't know about Yorkshire, it's the biggest county in England. And it's a very proud county. We're sort of like the Texans of England or the Bavarians of Germany. We're very sort of patriotic, very sort of plain speaking, and down to earth. That's how we see ourselves, anyway. And if you're from the south, then Yorkshire is sort of really country bumpkin stroke industrial territory, so you tend to get looked down on.
So are you considered a redneck by the Southerners?
Yes. I sort of got away with it because I spent so much time in the south of England, but I'm a sort of honorary Southerner, I think, in the eyes of some Southerners. I don't have much of a Yorkshire accent, but I have enough for a middle-class Southerner to recognise that I'm not Southern.
But right now you seem to be talking in RP. So are there are there any hints of?
Well, in the north of England, people have slightly different pronunciation. So, for example, instead of saying bus, they may say bus.
Yeah.
Or so there's a kind of "u" sound instead of that kind of thing. And most of when I go home to Yorkshire, my accent becomes more pronounced. I think it often happens, doesn't it? It's the same everywhere. But because I'm a teacher, I think my pronunciation is quite RP, really. And and I like to be intelligible to people.
To be honest, wonderful. But to be honest, on this podcast, we like any kind of accents as long as they are intelligible. So we have had some people from Northern Ireland, from Scotland.
Great.
We have had Actually, I think that the episode before you is with a Scouser. So
Oh, and Scout is great.
yeah,
It's great.
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
There are a couple of accents in the UK that are really difficult, even for native speakers. I would say one was the Geordie accent. In
Oh yeah.
Newcastle.
Oh, I used to have a friend. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
From
it's different words for things, and the other, of course, is Glaswegian.
Oh yeah, of course. Yeah. There's a
Glasgow
famous video about that as well.
Yeah.
With a builder, a Glaswegian builder.
Yeah.
Geordie accent. I always wanted to get this friend of mine onto the podcast from Newcastle, but she's shy. Like she whenever because I got to know her at a summer camp in Wembley. And she's very funny, and she's this kind of entertainer. But when it comes to doing things online, she tends to be very shy. She doesn't want to be seen online,
Right.
and heard. So it's a real shame, because I have to say, the first time I heard her, I had no idea what she was saying. No idea.
Sure.
But you do get used to it, though. You get used to it.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yes. I mean, I was at university in Durham, which isn't far from there, and I got used to it. There are things they say that are completely different. Like, I don't know is why a different naam on. I mean, that could be a different language, couldn't it? Why a different naam on? And they have this kind of sing-songy thing going on at the end. And
Okay.
a toilet is a netty. A netty. So they have this kind of glottal stop.
Glottal stop, yeah. But the thing is, you have got glottal stop all over the place. Like, you've got glottal stop in London, right?
Glottal,
In it,
yeah.
and all that, all
Yeah.
that. But when it comes to Newcastle, it's like a Geordie accent. It's a combination of that and the intonation and the vowel sounds are different, and it's madness. Yeah.
Yeah. So yes is why
Why? That's
It's
crazy.
wonderful. I love it. They're wonderful people. Absolutely lovely. They've got their own language, and God bless them for it.
Fantastic. So you're from Yorkshire. So that's on the east coast. That's on the east coast of England. Yeah.
Yes. If you were looking at a map of the UK, it's sort of halfway between London and Scotland. Maybe a bit more than halfway. And we've got a lovely coastline. And I was actually born on the coast in Scarborough. You may have heard of the song Scarborough Fair. It's a very old folk song.
When you say we're born on the coast, like literally on the coast, on the beach, somewhere on the beach
No, my mother didn't give birth on the beach, but in a town that is on the coast.
I thought so much. I was just
We do have a hospital.
silly joke.
No, she did actually manage to get to the maternity ward.
Thank God.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, excellent. Just to give my listeners a little bit of context, as you know, I do have another podcast which is seemingly unrelated to this podcast, called Zdenkov Chesky podcast, and some of you are like, "What? What's that?" That's because the listeners are not necessarily. I have two different podcasts, so the only thing that sort of connects these two podcasts, it's me as the host. Other than that, the other podcast is in Czech, this podcast is in English, the other podcast is for learners of Czech, this podcast is for learners of English. But why am I saying all this? It's because last week, or was it actually 2 weeks ago, I had Claire, you, on the other podcast. Yeah, so first I interviewed you in Czech.
Yes.
And now listeners are like, what? Yes, because Claire's Czech is amazing. Claire, you have to explain to us how that all came about.
Well, thank you for saying it's amazing. It's a very flattering assessment, but anyway.
It is an understatement.
Well, anyway, so the reason is that in the year 1984, the Orwell year, I married a Moravian Czech, and came to live in Kyiv in South Moravia. So it's about 60 kilometers from Brno.
That's not Kiev. That's not Kiev in
Not
Ukraine.
Kiev
No.
in Ukraine,
Yeah.
Kyiv with an O.
Kyiv.
E.
Okay. Okay.
And and I've been living here on and off ever since. So we're talking 38 years now. It seems incredible, but yes. And so I had 5 years of living under the former communist regime of Czechoslovakia, as it then still was. Then I continued from 1989 until 1998. So that's 14 years. Then I went to live in the UK. I got a job there.
Mm-hmm.
But I always kept coming back. My son was born in 1993, so he's got dual nationality and he's bilingual. Then I came back to work at the Prague British School in 2007 until 2011. And then since 2012, I've been working back in the UK. And I'm about to return, hopefully for good, in July of this year. So that's me back in South Moravia again. So when I first came to live here, which is, as I say, 38 years ago, I was the only Westerner in the whole county.
Wow.
So it was quite a big deal.
Well, it wasn't very common, right? Because it was during communism. Did we used to call it iron curtain or something like that, right? There was what's called Iron Curtain. So the world was divided. Yeah. Anything east of the Berlin Wall was pretty much different from what was west of Berlin Wall, and people didn't really cross that wall much, right?
No, it was very unusual, and there were all sorts of restrictions, mainly for people trying to get out, but even for people coming in to visit. So it was quite tricky, and people in the West didn't really understand what a beautiful country this is, and other countries that used to be behind the Iron Curtain. And I was just amazed when I came here, just at the beauty of the forests and the nature and everything, and even the sort of dilapidated buildings still seemed very beautiful to me. So it was great. There were things that weren't so great, obviously, but yeah. So I was. People used to point me out in the street in Kyiv.
Really?
I remember that. Yes, look, that's her. That's that Englishwoman.
Did you look like? I mean, we see how you look now. Like to me, you don't. How do I know if you're English? Like how did they know?
I don't know. They must have just met me at some point, and I can remember, because of course the Czechs then had quite fixed ideas about what English people ought to look like.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And I can remember once driving back across the border at it would be Mikulov, that sort of in the Břeclav sort of area, and
South Czech Republic,
sort of, I can't remember what the name of the checkpoint was now, but it was down that way, and it was the middle of the night, like 3 o'clock in the morning, because we were in our old Škodovka 120, and this rather sort of grumpy old passport control officer came staggering out of this hut, and he looked at my passport and he said, "You're not English." I'm sorry, what do you mean? And he looked at me and he said, "You look like a typical Moravian woman."
Was that? Did you find that insulting, or was it?
I have no idea. I
okay.
Honestly don't. I didn't really want to protest under the circumstances. And I thought, oh, well, if he thinks I look like one of you, fair enough. Yeah.
Okay, great. So this is really interesting. So you married. I can't say Czech because, as we know, Czech Republic, there's Bohemia, Moravia, and Silesia.
Yeah.
And so you married a Moravian guy.
Yeah.
And they can be a little bit touchy when we say you married a Czech. So we can't say that. So you have to say you married a Moravian.
A Moravian or a Moravian Czech. Yeah.
A Moravian Czech, yeah.
Mm.
And well, you might think, listeners, that when I said that Claire's Czech is amazing, it's just we were exchanging pleasantries and all that. But no, it's actually true, because it just if any of you can speak the language, we could have a quick conversation in Czech. I don't really do it here on this podcast, Claire,
Okay.
but ahoj, jak se máš?
Mám se dobře, děkuju. A co ty?
Super. Co jsi dělala dneska?
Dneska připravím výuku. Mám ve 3 hodiny hodinu angličtiny s děvčatama z třetíku.
I think this is enough, because you can say r, and that's it. Like if you can say r, then
Okay.
It's quite unusual for a foreigner to get to this level, because it's a difficult language. It's a difficult language, yeah. So you must have really immersed in the culture, yeah, and
I did.
It's great, yeah.
I did, and I did it consciously, in the sense that I knew that if I was going to make a life here, I was going to have to just deep dive, and also I think the other thing is there's that very uncomfortable phase, I think, especially if you're an adult, where you just have to accept that you're going to make a complete idiot of yourself on a regular basis by saying the wrong thing. And you've just got to say, right, well, that's the price I have to pay.
Yeah, you have to embrace it, and
Totally.
The sooner it happens, and the sooner you are okay with yourself being just okay and not perfect. The faster you make progress, and everything is easier.
Yeah. And also the other thing that makes it easier is that the Czechs are genuinely appreciative of anybody trying to learn their language. Not all nations are quite so generous.
I find that it's often the case when it comes to like smaller nations. Obviously, we're not that large, so it's nice when someone sort of takes the initiative or makes the effort to learn the language. It's
and it is such an incredibly rich language. There's just so much to be enjoyed in it, and it's so worth it. I think when I first came to live here, there were. This would be the 80s, still under communism. And I met a few ladies who'd married Czech pilots during the war and come to live here. Maybe 2 or 3, I remember. And none of them had really learned Czech that well. And I think if you let it slide for a few years, then you pass a point of no return. And you never really learn it properly.
Right. And I think it's much worse now, because back then, when you came, let's be honest, nobody was really learning English. We were learning Russian here. This was compulsory. It was a compulsory language. We didn't have English teachers. So it's different now, because if you come to this country as an Englishman or an Englishwoman or any other native speaker of the English language, then... and you go to Prague or Brno or one of these bigger cities, or even smaller towns, inevitably there will be enough people speaking English, so you will get by with English, and it happens more often than not, doesn't it? But back then it must have been really different, because it was like you were thrown in. What's the expression? Thrown in at the deep end, right?
End. Yes. Yeah. Yes. And the other thing that I think helped me, though, is that although Kyiv is a small town, it's got a population of about, I'm guessing, 12,000. It's not a big place. So in one sense, I was I stuck out like a sore thumb, to use the idiom. But in another way, because people know one another in small towns, people got used to me really quickly, and they just started talking to me in Czech. And I mean, I can remember in the first year I was here, I'd bump into somebody and they'd be very well meaning and they'd start spouting all this stuff about their families and their vineyards and their beehives and all this kind of thing. And I didn't know what the heck they were talking about, but eventually it got to the point where I did. You just have to ride it out.
I think these are like fantastic general learning tips, really. That anyone learning any language can apply. And you made it, so to speak, when it comes to the language. And now we could say you're bilingual, and your Czech, for me, it's very strong C2 level. Yeah. So I just want to ask you, so obviously you said now you are kind of working in the UK, but you're about to go back to the Czech Republic. So I've got this problem a little bit myself, because I've lived in the UK twice already. And it's the feeling of being a little bit torn. Are you experiencing something like that as well, or not so much?
That's a very interesting question, because what I do find, and I've now been living back in the UK for 10 years, actually. When I went to live back in the UK after all this time in Central Europe, because that included 5 years in Germany near Lake Constance. So it was just very Central European. And what I do find back in the UK is that I feel, although it's my home, I feel quite out of place there culturally in some ways. Because I think looking back, partly maybe because my dad was a Francophile and he loved traveling, I think I always felt that I was a Brit, but a European Brit.
Yeah.
And now to be a European Brit is a bit difficult.
And I thought we would make it without mentioning the B word.
The B word, yeah.
Here we go again. We have to talk about Brexit here.
Well, I don't know that we have to, but I know what you mean.
I'm just joking. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's. I don't know. I just think that it's not going to help anybody in the end. And I think that, to be completely frank, I think that people who voted either for or against were voting mainly emotionally rather than pragmatically. I think that's true of both sides. But the thing that I compare the Brexit campaign with is the campaign that went on a bit before that for Scottish independence, because my son was at Glasgow University when that was all going on. And the thing that really struck me about the run up to the referendum in Scotland was that the quality of the debate was just 1,000 times better on both sides. People were actually giving reasoned arguments for or against. And in the Brexit campaign, it was just so primitive.
Do you know what? Primitive. I'm afraid this is some sort of trend across the whole world. And I've got my own, I don't know if it's conspiracy theory or something like that. I think it's to do with the modern technology and with the fact that people's attention span is shorter and shorter. And if you really want to attract someone's attention, you have to make a quick, catchy, snappy video. And you have 3 seconds to convince someone. And the more emotional it is, obviously, the more you're likely to respond to it or click it. And this is exactly the same. The advertising works and all that, the marketing. And I think it's all connected because we are just different now. Because we have got so many, what's the word for it? So many distractions on so many things to look at. The mobile phone screens, our laptop, the advertising everywhere. It's just like inevitable that you don't. And what's happening, obviously, is the echo. So we have got the echo chambers. We've got the post-truth. Yeah. So people are no longer interested in facts. Yeah.
No.
All that. I think it's all all connected, in my opinion.
It is absolutely. I think it was already happening. I think by the 80s that people were becoming addicted to being entertained and to having other people pre-package ideas for them.
Yeah,
And once you get into that habit, I mean, let's face it, thinking for oneself is not a comfortable thing,
it's
because
tiring.
it's tiring, and you have to take responsibility for your own thoughts.
Yeah,
You know, um, I think this is one of the appeals of the conspiracy theory kind of market, that you can you can adopt the moral high ground without actually having to make any of the effort, and it's
yeah,
very appealing, very appealing.
yeah,
I was
yeah.
just
It's true.
reading today that Brexit has probably cost the UK already £54 billion. Just think what you could have done with £54 billion.
Yeah. Now, obviously, it's hard to sort of. It's hard to just blame Brexit, on everything,
Oh
because now
no,
obviously we have COVID, so people
COVID as
are
well.
COVID and the war, so it will
Yeah,
all have some sort of
fuel, cost of fuel.
implications, cost of fuel. So it will be really difficult to sort of compartmentalize it, to sort of analyze it and find what the real reasons for something happening are, because it's all kind of blended into this one thing, right? And it will be easy for Boris Johnson's government, for Conservatives to sort of point the finger at something else. That's
Yeah,
my worry. Yeah.
yeah. I think the UK is also not, in terms of its infrastructure, the UK is not well positioned for people on modest or low incomes.
Yeah.
Just if I compare things, the cost of just getting about in the UK is 10 times what it is here.
So when you
You
say
know,
getting about, you mean actually using
just getting from, yeah,
public
yeah, well,
transport and.
yeah. I mean, for one thing, there are many parts of the UK where there's virtually no public transport.
Okay.
If you take a town like Kiev, there's a bus station with like
Yeah.
16 stands on it, and you can get anywhere. You can get anywhere here. That's
Yeah.
not the case in rural towns in the UK anymore.
Now, I've
It's
got my
really
own share of experience getting around in London, and all I can tell is that it is bloody expensive in it.
it's expensive in it. Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, like if I just give you one simple comparison, if I go on a day return to London from Ascot, which is just under 1 hour on the train, it's about £13, right? And if I go from here to Uherské Hradiště, which is a similar distance, it's £2.
Well, it used to be that the standards of living were so different, and the Czech currency was so much so much less powerful than in comparison with the British pound sterling. But now it's not. The difference is not so striking or so big. So I think it's a real issue, as you say, for working class people, or people who are on the verge of poverty. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
There's a lot of people, more and more people are sliding into poverty now, even people who are in full-time work. It's a real issue. So it's not funny.
no.
I think everything's sort of come in at once. There's the cost of Brexit, there's the pandemic, and now there's the cost of fuel.
Yeah. I'm so sorry to hear that. So if we go back to our original question, so do you feel more Czech or British? Because now you are kind of both.
Yeah, well, I think that's how I feel actually. I mean, when I'm here now, I mean, it's my home. I've got my son. I had my son here. I've got friends here I've had for 30 odd years. So it feels very much like a second home. And I mean, the yes, as I say, I mean, there are things in England that I love and that I will miss, but in general, um, I just feel here that I can have a richer life, um, for even on a modest income.
Mm, mm, mm.
Things like theatre tickets are
Yeah.
not as expensive, or that we have a classical concert society here in Kiev. We have, that we've got quartets coming, and I know that isn't everybody's cup of tea, but it's mine. And I like Moravian folk music a lot, and everything is just there for you. Art
Mhm.
exhibitions that are free,
Mm, mm, mm.
you know.
So sort of cultural life is appealing to you here.
Very
Yeah.
much so. Yes, I
D-
like that
sh- sh-
feeling of, and I like the feeling of culture being part of everyday life and not just for
mhm.
rich people.
Yeah, I see what you mean. Shall we include Moravian wine in that category as
Totally.
well?
And Czech beer, I think.
Okay,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah, yeah,
Nice.
yeah,
Yeah. Uh,
definitely.
okay, Claire, I think it's time to talk about your profession as well, because I
Okay,
don't know how it happened, but we haven't really said anything about that yet, and I think it's extremely important because we
okay.
happen to be colleagues. Yeah.
Yes, we do.
You're an English teacher like me.
Yes.
So, like I said, you came here, or you said it actually first. You came here during communism, and then nobody was really learning English. So, were you an English teacher when you came, or?
Yes. I taught at the Kiev Gymnasium for a while. I
Okay.
had 2 sessions there. I taught at Brno at Masarykova Universita
Hmm.
for a couple of years, so at the Department of English and American Studies. I also taught private courses, some individuals, but I taught local adults, local companies, so that sort of level. People who need English for business communication.
Yeah.
Um, and Most recently, I've been teaching English online, and
Hmm.
that started in the pandemic.
Yeah.
But some of my online teaching will be permanently online because, for example, I teach students in China. So I have some online students in China through an agency in Beijing.
Mm.
So that's quite interesting. Every type of person you teach, you learn something different about how to do it and what the needs are.
Yeah.
So that's interesting. And then for 1 year, I also taught at a primary school here in the Czech Republic. So I've pretty much taught every age group,
Yeah, I can see that.
one way
And
or another.
you mentioned online teaching, and for those of you who are watching this as a video, because not only is this a podcast, ladies and gentlemen, we are also recording it as a video for Teachers Zdenek YouTube channel. For those of you who can see us in the flesh,
Mhm.
I have put up on the screen Claire's website. So what will the viewers find there, Claire, when they click Claire
One budget book. Well,
BlanchardBooks.com?
they will find that is actually the website of me in the parallel universe of me as a writer, because I also write fiction.
Oh, so
Uh,
you're like J.K. Rowling, yeah? Oh,
Sort of, yes. I mean,
yeah.
yes,
Okay.
but yes. So I wrote I wrote a well, I've written a couple of things, but the one that's been published is a murder mystery
Mm.
set in this locality, sort of Slovarsko.
When
So
you say this locality, like in
where,
southern,
yes,
southern
where I
more.
am. Yes, it's set in a
Okay.
fictitious town in Slovarsko, which is Moravian Slovakia. So
Okay.
yeah,
I
and
don't
it's a
know how
murder.
much. I don't know to what extent I can ask you about the plot, because that would be like a spoiler. Yeah.
Well, I
But
can tell you a little bit. I mean,
okay.
it's basically the story revolves around the mayor of this fictitious town is found dead in his own wine cellar
Oh.
in the small hours of the morning, having just celebrated his 57th birthday.
Mhm.
And two detectives from the local force are called in, and there seems to be quite a lot of pressure on them to say that he died of a heart attack. But without giving too much away, one of the detectives decides that that's not going to fly, that there was foul play. So the rest of the book is what follows. But the first of all, I wanted to write something in English that was set in this part of the world, because I thought that would be something interesting. And secondly, I wanted to write a different kind of noir fiction. You know that there's this Scandi noir.
Scandinavian noir, yeah.
So I kind of thought that Moravian noir would have to include the history of the country. By which I mean the communist history and the Nazi history.
So it is set. So is it set in time-wise? Is it set in
the present day?
In the present day. But there are some allusions or some references to those times.
Yes. So there without going into too much detail, there is a dark history to the family involved. And it's pretty dark, actually. And,
I like that.
Yeah.
You're selling it to me. To me.
Good. Yeah. So that's one incarnation of Clare Blanchard. This Clare Blanchard books, and my other business, the tutoring business, is called Smart for Life.
Smart for Life. Okay.
Smart for Life Academy.
So what's that about then? How is that different?
Well, Smart for Life is basically my alter ego as an English tutor. So Smart for Life Academy, that is.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
And this, it's Smart 4 is the 4 is a number. Anyway, we can sort it out afterwards. So I have a couple of free courses on there. It's really quite new. I haven't developed it all that much. And I've got a couple of things that are there available for free. So people can try out and see what I've got to offer in terms of tutoring. My niche market, rather like you are the football man, I'm the academic essay writing person. But again, my repertoire extends to what people need, but I specialize in teaching people how to write for academic purposes.
Mm-hmm. So basically, if someone is, ladies and gentlemen, if some of you are struggling with writing a good IELTS essay, or if you need to write your PhD, Claire is the person to
I'm your girl.
Contact.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Good.
So you have got there's this free course that you're offering to people, and all you're asking for is their email. And so if they provide their email, you will send them this free course where they can learn the basics on how to write a good essay, right?
Yes, it's a step-by-step course, and at the end of the course, there's a bonus lesson which is a recording of a tutorial I did with a psychology student in London about an essay that she had written a draft of, and how she could improve it. And it's a sort of composite of where I feel most people tend to have problems. So the first one being actually answering the question that was given rather than the question they would like to have been given. It's actually quite the toughest thing actually is deciding what to leave out. It's like it is with a lot of things.
It sounds like my life, Claire.
Yes, I think there could be something in that. So it is all about focus, actually.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that's why they call it a discipline, because it's
Yeah, sometimes I'm all over the place. I spread myself too thin, and my attention is divided amongst all sorts of things.
yes, yes. I
Yeah.
think this is a common problem with people. Anybody who's entrepreneurial or creative, you become a bit of a magpie if you're not careful. And I find I see something, I go, oh right, yeah, I'll have that, and then I think, hang on, I'm just spread way too thin, and none of this is actually, or very little of it, is actually getting me to where I want to go.
Hmm.
So, for example, I deliberately restrict myself on social media. I don't have a presence on all social media. So I'm current.
Smart woman.
Well, you can literally drive yourself crazy.
Yeah, yeah. I'm in the process of that happening right now, so I know exactly what you're talking about, Claire.
Yeah, yeah. So I've decided that for my purposes, I focus on LinkedIn and Facebook, and I don't really bother with much else, and that's quite enough for me.
That's why we met on LinkedIn, actually.
We did, yes. It depends on the kind of business you've got and the kind of clientele you're looking for. But Facebook is obviously it's a whole other hornet's nest. Some of it is just awful, but some of it is really good. So that's how I do it.
So this writing course, the how to write a good essay, that's something that any of my listeners can get for free.
Absolutely. Yeah,
and they will find it on smart4, number 4, not 4 spelled out, but number 4, life.academy.
That's right, yes. And if you just go onto the courses page, it's there. There are 2 free courses. I've also got a free goal setting course, which you might like to have a look at. But that's quite generic. I think probably that needs developing into something a bit more specific. But the essay writing course, I'm really keen for people to download that and give me feedback, because I will be going commercial with it quite soon, and it will go on Udemy probably for something in the region of £20 a shot in a week or two. So get it while you can.
So it's a unique opportunity to get hold of it before that happens. Yeah.
Yes.
Nice.
And so I'm very happy also to answer questions if people have specific issues with essay writing. It's not. In all modesty, I have to say, there aren't many people who teach essay writing very effectively these days. If you go from sort of senior high school level up to university level, a lot of even very clever students arrive at university struggling with essay writing.
Yeah. So when I was doing my Delta, they told us that there are 2 basic approaches to teaching writing. So we are now going to talk English teaching. Yeah. So I don't know. Like I'm to be honest, it's my least favorite thing to teach. It just is. Writing, but I know it's extremely important as well. I've had my fair share of essay corrections as a teacher as well, of course.
Of course.
So what we learned there at the Delta course is that there are 2 approaches: product and process writing. If it rings a bell. So
yes.
Which one of these are you? Do you subscribe to? Shall I explain it to our listeners?
Yes, maybe just give a definition.
I'm not sure if I know it that well, but I think one of them is that you have got a model. You've got a model like what a good what a good essay should look like, and you kind of go from there, and then you sort of pick out the language, and you're trying to replicate the model with the students. And the other one is that's the product writing, I believe. And then you have got the process writing, which is you let the student. I hope I'm saying this right, by the way.
Okay.
If there are teachers listening to this, and I'm not saying this right, please feel free to give me a stick for this. And the process one is that you let the students write something, and then you sort of analyze it, and you kind of focus on what's really necessary. Like you focus on the problems at hand, and then you kind of deal with that. Does it make any sense?
Yeah, I think it does it makes perfect sense. I think the way I would respond to that is that it depends what kind of writing you're doing. Because if you're doing a creative essay, which can be an assignment within an exam, then you don't want to get your students so bogged down in a preconceived format that they can't just let something happen. But if you're teaching an academic type of writing, where you get a specific question, I often use an example from history. What were the causes of World War II? It's a typical, GCSE essay question in history. Then you have to have there a scaffolding, or sort of framework, and you know that you're going to, in your introduction, you're going to redefine the question and explain how you propose to answer it. Then in your middle section, you're actually going to answer it with your detail, and then in your conclusion, you're going to refer back to it. Yeah. And if you've got that in an academic essay, then you can't actually go very far wrong.
Mm-hmm. There's a clear structure, and I think it's quite similar. If any of you are familiar with the quite popular, or let's say infamous for some, IELTS academic.
Yes.
IELTS academic. So there are two tasks, and the first one, especially the first one, is very, very specific indeed. Yeah, it's where you are asked to describe a graph, and that is very formulaic. So whenever I taught that, I for example, I had some classes at Speak Up London when I was living in the UK, and whenever I taught that gave me the impression that this is the one that really helps if you give your students some kind of model.
Yes.
And just because it's very formulaic, and once you kind of get the hang of the formula, you can't really go wrong with it. No. You just the vocabulary is clear, obvious. The grammar you use is always the same.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's not much space for creativity, and it's not really desired in any way.
No. I think I feel that good writing is always purpose-driven. So you need to know what you're writing it for and who you're writing it for. And that will help you to decide on your structure, and it will also help you to decide on the kind of language you do. To me, there are two big problems that students have with writing. One is not answering the question.
Yeah.
Right. And the other is not pitching the style and the register correctly, because they haven't actually thought, what is this for and who is it for?
Do you know what? I really like you mentioning this, because if we look at the criteria that Cambridge sets for essay writing, whether we are talking about the whichever exam we are talking about, the FCE, CAE, CPE, or even IELTS, there are 4 criteria, and people might have the wrong impression that writing it's just about grammar and vocabulary. Yeah, I think it's most people's thinking. But you know what? There are 4 criteria, I guess. And when you mentioned answering the question, it's one criterion. So if you get that right, you can get so many points. Yeah, and then another one is using the right register. So the level of formality, right? It's and structure and all that. So it's not just about the language.
No, it's not. I mean, if I go back to my sort of stock history question, what were the causes of World War II? Especially if candidates are nervous and they feel that they want to produce some quantity, they will interpret that question. You know how you go into a kind of short circuit when you're a bit nervous.
Always.
So they will interpret that question to mean write everything you know about World War II.
Mm-hmm.
And so they'll splurge masses of material onto the page, but very little of it will be relevant to, so it's not answering the question. And it's partly, and this is my other hobby horse, I'm sorry. It's partly also because people don't read as much as they did when I was young. So if you read a lot, you learn how to recognize core ideas, and then you learn how to reproduce them. And I can prove this because my own son only had 18 months worth of education in English at school, and yet he scored an 8.5 in IELTS when he went to Glasgow.
That's more than me. I scored 8.
Yeah, well, I'm not surprised, but so he'd not had formal schooling in English since he was 6.5. But what he's always done right the way through his childhood, he's a voracious reader.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is quite the opposite of me. Yeah, because I don't read much. I just listen so much. I'm a massive fan of podcasts.
Right.
Yeah, but when it comes to reading, and I've got a cousin who is an avid reader himself, and so we grew up together. Yeah, we lived under one household, and he always read, and I always just played games or listened to something. So it's just, for me, I'm this impatient kind of person, and it's just like I grow tired. Like when I have read things in my life, of course, yeah. Don't get me wrong, but I don't read as much, and I know it's a shame. I know it, but it's
not you.
It makes me fall asleep when I read.
Well, that's fair enough. But the thing is, if you're a podcast fan, then you are constantly absorbing the language and thinking in the language. I mean, I can tell when I'm speaking to you that I'm speaking to someone who is thinking in English. When you're speaking English.
That's the idea. Yeah.
And you can't take that for granted, because a lot of people. Well, what I'm saying is you have to be pretty proficient in the language to think in it. And can I ask you something, because it really interests me. This.
Go ahead.
Do you find that when you're in either English or Czech, that you have a different way of thinking or even different emotions?
Absolutely. I have explored this topic on this podcast already. You are a different person completely. Yeah, it's different. Yeah. Of course.
So wasn't it Masaryk who said "Kolikrát umíš jazyku, tolikrát si člověkem" or something?
It's a famous Czech.
I can't remember.
Kind of saying.
Basically saying that the number of, in however many languages you speak, that's how many people you are.
Yeah, so it kind of means that you can be different personalities, but you're one person, but you have kind of more personalities.
Yeah. You actually take on a different personality with a different language. Yeah, I find that absolutely fascinating.
Yeah, me too. And that's why I also find fascinating having you on these podcasts, because it's really interesting to see, because. Like we say this, that we are a different personality, but in some respects you're Claire, and you were Claire when we talked Czech 14 days ago on my Czech podcast, and in some respect you are still the same person. Yeah, so it's really interesting. This,
but also there's a sort of continuation of that thought, which is that if you can get to a level of proficiency in a language where you're aware of a different persona, then you have a much wider understanding of other people.
Yeah.
In the positive and the negative.
I can tell you something, yeah. So because of becoming an English teacher, I have learned to be more open-minded as a person. And I'm really happy that this is the way I see it, because especially because of teaching a lot of international students, because the thing is, like, you may have a lot of Czech teachers here in the Czech Republic who just teach Czech people because they work for a state school or something, or they have private students and all of them are Czech. But I like to teach all sorts of different nationalities, and I feel like it makes my job richer and more intriguing and fascinating, and that's what I don't know what my original point was, but I think it made me more open-minded.
Yeah, definitely. You have a greater understanding and a greater empathy for other people, I think. And also there's just such richness in another language. It's fascinating. I love Czech fairy tales. I love reading Czech stories, and I love it. I love getting every week. I'm a subscriber to Respect magazine, which I can get online, obviously, when I'm in the UK, and it just sort of brings me back into that world, of the Czech Republic, and it is different. Different way of looking at things.
Oh, that's fantastic. You see, us Czech people, we are not always that patriotic, but let's be honest, it's nice when someone talks so nicely about your country. Yeah. Thanks for that, Claire.
Well, I love it.
Personally, I can say all the best about your country and your people, because I love it too, and it's a little bit different, and it's great, especially. My number one thing that I admire about you is the humor. It's just
yeah. No, I think the British sense of humor, actually, and the Czechs have a tremendous sense of humor. I think it's actually a kind of medicine, a kind of saving grace in some ways. The ability to laugh at oneself is hugely important. I know what you mean.
Once you kind of get close to it, or what's the expression? Once you get into it, dive into British humor, and you learn to understand it and learn to appreciate it. It's just anything else. Anything else I watch, I don't find it as funny anymore. So I might laugh at a joke by an American, or if there's an American comedy. But to be honest, like when I look at The Office, for example, like there's the British version of The Office with Ricky Gervais, and then there's the American one, and I enjoyed them both, but I definitely enjoyed the British one more. It's just the way it is. It's just the humor is more like subtle, or I don't know. I can't explain it. It's more, as you say,
more edge. It's got more edge,
more self-deprecation and all that. And whereas let's say the American humor, it's more like it's like about laughing out loud, and like more the humor is kind of more universal, more like slapstick,
Yeah, I don't think American culture really does irony in the way that Europeans do it. I think irony is a kind of old world phenomenon.
And sarcasm as well. Even though we have Sheldon Cooper was quite good, though. Sheldon Cooper from the Big Bang, Big Bang Theory.
Yeah, Sheldon's great.
Let's give him that.
Yeah, Sheldon's great. It's quite grown up. Sheldon's humor. I agree.
All right.
But do you know some of the old shows of the 70s? I think on TV, the old shows of the 70s. I love MASH. I do. Yeah. If we're talking about American humor, I love the MASH series.
MASH, the one about the Korean War. Yeah.
Yes, it's brilliant. And of the UK ones, I'm a big fan of Rising Damp.
I have to look into that.
Oh, you'll love it. You can get it on YouTube.
Okay.
It's so old now that it's past the franchise.
It doesn't matter. For example, I really enjoyed Mind Your Language.
Yeah, I don't know that one.
Oh, you're gonna love it.
Mind Your Language.
It may seem a little bit. It's not really racist, but let's say you couldn't do this now. Like you couldn't.
Oh no, 70s.
You couldn't do this now.
So if you look at Rising Damp, it's set in a boarding house in the north of England, and the landlord is a complete racist bigot. I mean, he's awful. I mean, but it's terribly funny.
Yeah. Mind Your Language. If you have never seen it, you're gonna love it because it is about an English teacher. We don't get many TV shows about English teachers, do we? So it is about an English teacher teaching a group of students at a school in London, and oh, it's so funny. It's like he makes fun. Like there are make fun of stereotypes and all those things. You have different students from different nationalities, and it's a lot of like teacher humor that you're gonna get it more as someone who is a teacher too. You're gonna like identify more with the main character you will relate to the main character more as a teacher, I think. It's also on YouTube.
I'll definitely take a look at that, Zdenek, because I'm always up for humor.
Yeah. Okay. Great.
Always up for humor.
And then there's this one, Fawlty Towers. That's a good one. That's a good one. Yeah.
That's really interesting because you know that John Cleese, who's the main character, Basil Fawlty, he came to that after Monty Python, which was a kind of pioneering comedy at the time. And everybody asked, or people were critical of him for going into a sitcom out of Monty Python. But it is absolutely timeless in its humor. You know, and I love Fawlty Towers.
Yeah, it's so funny.
Yeah, I just love it. It's one of those things you could just watch over and over. One more recent show that I really like is Frasier.
No, okay. Is that a comedy too, or?
Yeah, it's a sitcom set in Seattle.
Okay.
And it's 20 years old now. I think it's a 90s one. But it ran for, I think, 11 years. Very good writing. Very specific somehow. But the character, it's really character-driven comedy. Really character-driven comedy.
Yeah, when it comes to the more recent ones, I've always been a massive fan of Black Books.
Oh, love it. Yeah, Black Books.
I could never get enough of that. I can't remember how many times I have seen the whole show.
Yeah, no, I love it. Yes, I love that. Yeah, that's also a favorite of mine. Yeah.
Nice. So hopefully our listeners and viewers might have written down a few of these shows and might check them out themselves, because I think these shows are worth it. Thank you very much, Claire, for everything and for your story, for sharing your story with us on this podcast. And I hope it's not the last time I talk to you here. Is there? Do you think is there anything we should say? Do you have any last words or anything like that?
Well, no. I mean, I just wanted to say thank you for the opportunity to be on the show in English, because it was nice to do it in Czech, but this is different again, and it was great. And I'd very much like to maybe in a future podcast talk about in more detail about the English side of things. You know, the teaching. Yep. You know, and there are. I mean, we've discovered that there are other topics we have in common that we could also talk about, depending on your interest. But it's been great fun and really enjoyable. So,
well, I'm glad to hear that, and the pleasure is all mine. And you are always welcome on this podcast whenever there is an interesting thing to discuss. Right. You'll be one of the first people on the list to invite.
Thank you. That's really great. And I'll look forward to that. Okay.
Likewise. So have a good one, Claire, and
you.
all the best with your teaching, with the courses.
Thank you.
And when you are in the Czech Republic, and I wanted to say fly when you are on the plane, flying across my town, because you are more to the east than me.
Yeah.
You could wave from the plane, but I don't
will
think.
do that.
Do planes? Is there an airport in? Is there an airport in Brno? Right, there's
yes,
one.
Brno's
right?
the nearest. Yeah, Brno is the nearest. Yeah, good old Ryanair from Stansted.
Okay. All right. So thank you very much, everyone, for listening. Thank you for watching, and thank you for being on the podcast, Claire. Until next time.
Until next time. Bye-bye for now.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Would you like to become more confident and fluent in English? Would you like to practice speaking regularly with international friends? Would you like to develop your communication skills? Would you like to get more exposure to English and great new routines which are bound to increase your English level? If your answers are yes, 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 and yes, then you should join the Achievers Chamber Discord group and take part in regular events and group lessons with me, Teacher Zdenek, and other members. In this brilliant and growing community, we have members at B1, B2, C1 and even C2 level. There are 3 different tiers of membership to choose from: basic, silver and gold, depending on your budget. Our members are from 8 different countries. Bear in mind that most events and lessons take place in the evening of Central European time. For more details about the benefits of the membership and instructions on how to join, head over to teacherzdenek.com.